The basketball playoffs are here on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on the action. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code FIELD, that's code FIELD, and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for just playing, guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
That was the crowd in Center City cheering for Larry Krasner, who won the Democratic primary for district attorney Tuesday. He now heads to the general election in November, and with no Republicans running, he's all but guaranteed a third term as district attorney. We're at Krasner's victory party and giving you the latest primary election results. It's Wednesday, May 21st. I'm Trenae Nuri, and here's what Philly voted on. Joining me for this conversation at Pipeline in Center City is CityCast Philly executive producer Matt Katz. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Trenae.
Matt, we're recording as the primary race was called. It's 11 p.m. on Tuesday, the 20th. 83% of divisions are reporting. We just heard District Attorney Larry Krasner's victory speech where he thanked his wife, his team, and Philadelphia voters.
Yeah, a lot of energy here tonight. It was what looks like, if not a landslide victory for Krasner over his challenger, the former judge, Pat Dugan, but in the very least, a decisive victory. Krasner was not endorsed by the Democratic Party of the city of Philadelphia, remember, nor by the powerful building trades union. And he got outspent by Dugan by a lot. But at his victory speech tonight, which we just we're standing there for, he was flanked by city council members and state reps and a slew.
Who have been on the show.
Yes, that's true. And a slew of powerful black politicos who really did help him secure what looks to be a third term. I mean, it was the black political establishment that was really on display behind Krasner, a white prosecutor, that really led him to what seems like a third term here.
I also want to point out he gave some like one-liners in the speech tonight.
Yep.
See my point. There are these people who think you can buy votes that other people have earned. There are these people who think the way to win a campaign is to lie. All the time. It's to ignore the truth and ignore reality. It is to whip up fear. It is to turn people on each other instead of getting them to turn to each other to support each other. And we are about a different kind of campaign. It's the kind of campaign that wins.
Three times.
Yeah.
Three-peat.
I think in Kansas City they would like to call it a three-peat. But in Philly, we do call it a three-peat.
That was obviously a nod to the Eagles Super Bowl win. Mm-hmm. One thing I also wanted to point, or what I noticed in this particular primary, is the low voter turnout. I've been talking about this on the show, and at 1:30 a.m., 94% of divisions are reporting, with about 14.16% of registered voters that participated in this particular primary.
At my polling place, there were 3 booths. Nobody was in any of them when I showed up. Not that, and I think that's reflective of what was happening throughout the city. I think part of it is that there just wasn't the kind of anger that we've seen in the past about Krasner and his progressive policies. When the murder rate was up 4 years ago when he ran and ultimately won a second term, you saw a lot more anti-Krasner campaigning out there, and that just wasn't really the case this time around.
All right, let's get into some of the context of this race, right? What does all this mean? Since there's no Republican, like you said, Krasner's primary win on Tuesday essentially means that he will come back for a third term.
I just want to, that's what we think, but it's also breaking tonight that apparently Dugan won the Republican primary's write-in vote. And this had come up during the campaign. Republicans were trying to get Dugan on the ballot for November as a Republican, and Dugan's campaign had said, no, we're not interested. He's not going to be a candidate on the in the Republican Party. Dugan also trashed Trump many times during the campaign. But if he won a write-in campaign for the Republican nomination, it is possible that he is on the ballot in November running against Krasner again. Although if he, as he said, he won't really be campaigning, he's not really going to accept this nomination, it might be meaningless. But I just wanted to throw that wrinkle in there.
So he can be a write-in for the Republican?
There were no Republican candidates running,
right,
but some Republicans wrote his name in. So he will technically
I see.
win the Republican nomination as the district attorney. But if he doesn't agree to actually be a candidate and doesn't run a campaign, then it'll be meaningless. Also, he just lost to this guy by a big margin in the Democratic primary.
And he told me in our interview, we talked about that sort of criticism of well, are you Democrat, are you Republican? Yeah. And he was very firm and
very adamant,
saying, I am a Democrat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did not seem like he wants to be associated with Republicans. But it is an interesting wrinkle to think about. We don't have the final results of the write-in vote. It takes a bit of time for them to calculate all that, see how many people voted for Mickey Mouse and Rihanna.
Right. Okay. Got it. You know what? Since we brought up the Republicans, let's talk about Trump and how his impact, so to speak, influenced this election or the pushback of Trump's policies and rhetoric and all that.
Yeah, Krasner really tried to position himself as the candidate who was going to be a protector of Philadelphia from Trump's policies. And he repeatedly said that if ICE overstepped its legal authority in terms of deporting immigrants in Philadelphia, he would go after the federal government. And he came up with that phrase, F around and find out. That became his motto. It was chanted tonight during his victory speech. That was something that Krasner repeatedly would go back to. I'll go after this guy. I did so before. I'll do it again. We all don't like him. I'm going to be the one to protect you from Trump. So that was sort of his main campaign focus. And the second focus of Krasner's campaign was the murder rate, right? I mean, I'm looking at the crime stats right now on phillypolice.com, and they're remarkable. Murders, assaults, robberies, all down from last year by a lot. As Krasner said tonight, we're on pace to have the lowest homicide rate in more than 50 years this year. And obviously that doesn't take away from the bloodshed that is still all too common. I was talking to Steve Keeley from Fox 29 tonight. He came to this event from a crazy shooting in West Philly. And so obviously the city's far too violent, and there are people that blame Krasner for not being tough enough on shooters and other criminals. But the city, by these numbers, is a lot safer, particularly than it was during the aftermath of the pandemic. And I think that's a big reason why there weren't people that came out today to vote this guy out of office.
Right. I feel you on that point about Philly feeling safer based off these numbers. Yeah. But again, you mentioned too, when crime happens at your front door, it is you don't want to hear about this.
Totally.
You want justice for your family. You want to know what's going on in their case, right? And these are sentiments that many Philadelphians have talked about over the many years that Krasner has been in office. So families want to know and get accurate, up-to-date information about the case involving their family member. And
they've criticized the prosecutors who work for him for not being as communicative with them as they as they wish they would. But these same communities that are have experienced this disproportionate amount of violence and that have been victims of the violence in the city are also the same communities that have dealt with over-policing. And that is something that Krasner has really tackled. I mean, 45 people, he said tonight, have been exonerated on his watch. And these are people that went to prison for crimes they did not do, at least by what the judicial system now says, but they went to prison because of police and prosecutorial misconduct. And I think part of why he appears to have won a third term is because people have recognized that he's, as he says, trying to make the city fairer. He says fairer, and that means people don't get locked up for doing stuff that they didn't do.
Mm-hmm. We've got more election results after this break.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
All right. Any news on the ballot questions, Matt?
All three ballot measures passed. Again, these were to create an Office of Homeless Services Ombudsperson, someone to, monitor how we're providing services to the homeless. Question 2 mandates more money will be going toward affordable housing. That passed. And question 3 was to create an independent Philadelphia Prison Community Oversight Board and an Office of Prison Oversight. And this is to deal with the problems that we've had in city prisons and to try to have more eyes on what's going on behind bars and make sure that people are being treated fairly. So all those questions did pass. And then the judicial elections is really the only other thing on the ballot. Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, let's take a look. So there was so many judges.
Municipal court and common pleas court.
Yeah, that's when it gets a little interesting. So for the Court of Common Pleas, Democratic candidates, it's pretty close. A lot of candidates have like a little bit over 11%. There's a few that have a little over 10% of the vote. And this is that race where you vote for 9, but there's 10 candidates running.
Yeah, right. So it's going to take a little more time to sort that out.
Over on the race for municipal court, there are 3 slots available with 5 candidates. And it's looking like Amanda Davidson, who I believe the Philadelphia Bar Association had recommended, is leading that race. Sherry Cohen and Cortez Patton are also in the top 3 slots. Yeah,
that's the kind of race where ballot position, as we've talked about, matters a lot. Like where they were on the ballot will probably make a difference in those races. Again, like you said, only Amanda Davidson was the only candidate for municipal court who was recommended by the Bar Association committee that vets these judges. So there will be a couple of other judges, if Davidson wins, a couple of other judges who are not recommended by the bar who will be on municipal court.
And again, that is a caveat. Mm-hmm. There is a lot that goes into recommended, not recommended.
Sure.
So for the Republican candidates, there were none for common pleas or for municipal court.
We will have more on the races and give you final results on Friday News Roundup on the show.
We'll be talking more about criminal justice in the city on May 29th at the Pen and Pencil Club with 4 local reporters, WHYY's Cherry Gregg, NBC 10's Lauren Make, the Philadelphia Inquirer's Ellie Rushing, and KYW's Pat Loeb. Come out and join us. There's a link to register for this event in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more analysis once we get some rest and have some beers at the Pen and Pencil Club.
That's some water. The analysis. All right. Thanks, Matt.
And thanks to our listeners for being interested in this stuff. And for those of you who voted, I always like an election day. Even though we had a very low turnout, that could be depressing. I like the rhythm of going about going into the ballot, seeing the poll workers there, people that volunteer their time for their particular candidates or to make sure the elections are safe and fair. And it was cool to see the energy in this place tonight, too, where Philadelphians were gathered who believe that this is a guy who's going to make the city safer and fairer. And, they came out to cheer him on. So local democracy in practice.
Love to see it. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. If you enjoyed this episode about the primary election results as we know it, tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter, Hey Philly, to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.